Alright guys, that's Kremp again. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. After an absolutely disastrous weekend for OpTic Texas and Kenny individually, the man himself has come out and responded to the entire situation, admitting his performance has been completely unacceptable as of late and it needs to change ASAP. What should OpTic do in this scenario? This team won the World Championship not that long ago, but right now there is one man letting the side down in the statistical column. If they stick it out, will it work? But it can only surely take so much of this before the internal chemistry of that team is not what it once was. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. First of all, just from FaZe real quick, of course, they 3-0'd OpTic without too much difficulty the other day. And they were like, yeah, welcome back, AG. And it's not like Prid's been playing bad. I will say, like, looking at his arrow on the minimap sometimes, I definitely think him and Shotzzy have some speed to get up to, let's say, in terms of how they're working together from an SMG side. But, look, Prid can still shoot, there's no doubt about that. But, yeah, that entire team structure with Hook, with Prid, isn't working for Kenny. And that's a serious problem as it stands. Because even last year, when maybe Prid was making plays that Kenny wasn't very happy with, and there was discussions about how, well, you know, when Kenny's focused on getting the best out of his teammates and making sure they're doing the correct things on the map, his own level can drop off to some degree, and that tends to happen in the online qualifiers a fair bit. But even if that was happening last year, you weren't dropping 0.5s, you know, it was 0.8 to 0.9 sometimes, and they were still usually winning. So we're going to talk about some replacement options as well. The reality is, for OpTic, there aren't many, and I still don't think they should do it. But, you know, it obviously is becoming kind of difficult to defend with these performances over the last few days. So, iLLey's team, they came third in the Cup yesterday, which was a pretty good result. Although, the entertaining thing about it, really, from the outside looking in, was that the winner of the Cup was the man that iLLey dropped the other day. You guys remember when there was that big drama, right, between iLLey and Prolute live on stream? And it was actually Prolute's team, Prolute, Sparks, Ghosty and Darkside. They won the Cup, so good result from them. Does it put these guys in a position to get back into the league? Maybe not. And maybe, though, there will be some changes in these rosters over the coming days. The reality is what probably is going to matter is who wins the Challengers tournament at Major 2 in Dallas, because whoever wins that is probably getting picked up after the tournament. We know how that one tends to go. iLLey was also tweeting this. So I think there were some 8s going down last night. I know there's been some talk about this as well, that, you know, the fans, especially the OpTic fans, they want to see the entire OpTic team really putting in the grind over the next few days. You know, 8 search and destroy chals, extra set to scrims. Because you guys probably remember what happened when FaZe were struggling. FaZe were in a slump. Let's not forget, they were losing scrim sets like 6-2, 7-1 to challenger teams. Like, it was not looking good. We talked about it at some length over the Christmas period, but they were the team working harder than anyone, right? FaZe were putting in the reps. They were playing a couple of scrims. They weren't streaming their practice, but they were happy for other teams to stream it, and they would often have a third scrim set of the day against a challengers team. Sometimes it would be Fellow's team, sometimes it would be somebody else, and they'd be splitting maps or even losing maps to these teams. But FaZe were, at that period where they were struggling, the hardest working team in the league. I've got no doubt about it. Thieves were taking a bit of a break over the Christmas period. HyDra's waiting to get his visa sorted again. And FaZe took the opportunity to really put in the extra hard yards. Yeah, they weren't playing 8s, because Simp doesn't tend to like to do that, although some of the players, certainly Drazah, absolutely loves it. But they were going the extra mile, and I think that OpTic at this point, they can't just sit back and say, oh, well, you know, we'll get there, right? We'll improve over time. We'll be good enough. Like, you know, they need to do what FaZe did Christmas, New Year, because that will either teach you, you've got it, like, you're still capable of fixing these errors, or, you know, the confidence will continue to struggle, because at the end of the day, the confidence the team has is often based on how good they know themselves to be. And right now, I don't think OpTic believe they're very good. I think you can tell it on their faces. And when you got 2-0 in a control against RenkoR and you get reverse swept in the control, just indicative of the problems that we've been discussing. So anyway, last night I thought this was pretty funny from iLLey. Yo, Botsy, come out of hiding so Papa can teach you a lesson. And here's Shotzzy in the replies. So yeah, I guess we'll see whether Shotzzy decides that iLLey is now the man to come into lineup. I don't think so. But look, honestly, who knows at this point? Crazier things have happened as they already have this season, let's be real, with this OpTic team. Dashy and Prolute getting into it. Dashy as well, again, it's like, no comment on the matches, and I totally get it, but I probably wouldn't be commenting on the matches either. But it's not like Dashy wasn't tweeting, he was. But he just decided, you know what, let's just forget those matches ever happened on this weekend and try and attack it again next time because, you know, getting 3-0'd by the Rocker, I mean, all of these maps are winnable, obviously, as you can tell, but still, game 1, probably OpTic will feel like they coulda, shoulda won. They had a good opportunity. They took the lead towards the end of the game. Looked like they were going to make a comeback. Volt, I mean, they won 4 rounds. I don't know how. Like, there were so many just complete trolls in there. They probably should have won that one. And then the Volt, they're up 2-0. But at the end of the day, the scoreboard doesn't lie. They got 3-0'd in the series. And it's maybe a bit concerning because there was discussion here from Benjay that the maps that OpTic played against ReeaL were some of ReeAl's absolute best maps. And it's not like OpTic don't know that. I just feel like, and there was discussion in the replies, maybe that's just all they had to offer, right? Like, maybe OpTic feel like the way that they're playing some of these maps right now in scrims, they had to square up with ReeaL on maps that ReeaL like because, you know, all the other maps that OpTic don't feel confident on, right? So, you know, maybe that's a problem for them potentially as well. But of course, the numbers, if you guys didn't see yesterday's video, were pretty outrageous, actually. I mean, it's not even the KD, although it is. It's more like the deaths, right? I mean, that's the thing. 90 deaths in 3 maps is borderline unheard of, actually. Like, that genuinely might be a record, right? Like, have we ever seen anything like that before? 90 deaths in 3 maps. Like, think about, I mean, he had 40 deaths map 1 and map 3. So imagine he popped another 40 deaths on the Valhalla point. That would have been 130 deaths. Like, you know, he could have been pushing absolute all-timer numbers here. Like, it's genuinely impressive now to die that many times. And he was obviously trying to, like, get in the mix because his damage was high, his engagements were high, but he was just losing a load of fights. And I think this is why there is even more criticism of Kenny's play than I would otherwise expect, is just because he's meant to be the leader, right? He's meant to be the Mr. Fundamentals, the guy who's playing the game the right way. That's why, you know, it's becoming difficult to defend Kenny, because if he was dropping bad numbers, but you could tell that he was approaching it the right way, and he was just losing the gunfights or whatever, like, then maybe fair enough. But Kenny's getting caught off guard a lot, doesn't seem to really know what the other team are doing, what his team should be doing, where he should be positioning. He's going on these massive death streaks, which, like, we've not really seen in the league at all, certainly from a guy like Kenny. And, you know, he's meant to be the guy playing COD the right way. Doesn't feel like the case right now, which is why the only fundamentals left are the fact that Kenny knows how to win, has won in the past, and maybe will continue to do in the future. But realistically, that's the only thing keeping him on the team. And presumably, his teammates' faith in him to turn it around. But, I mean, I don't know how long that can last with stuff like this. So, you know, in the control as well, obviously map 1 and map 2 were terrible, but the control, you know, the 39 deaths or whatever was not great when you're playing 3 rounds. Like, okay, they played 5 rounds of control, but I mean, averaging that many deaths a round isn't going to help your team especially well. And of course, Maven was defending Kenny, and I'm of agreement that OpTic shouldn't get rid of Kenny, certainly not yet. But Maven was in agreement as well that, like, it's becoming difficult to defend. Myself, and Maven included, believe that Kenny added an awful lot to the OpTic team last year and to the franchise. And it is still my opinion that if OpTic get rid of Kenny, I think in the long run, in terms of event victories, it will not prove to be a good idea. In the short run, from like maybe even a honeymoon period perspective, you bring somebody else in and playing better COD, and maybe even, like, let's be real, making sure you're in winners for your own major. You know, these are things that might be relevant, but also OpTic are going to collect their rings at the major, so they're not going to drop Kenny before then. I mean, surely not, you wouldn't imagine. So, anyway, Maven was talking about it, Gersh was talking about it as well. There was lots of discussions about this. I thought this was an interesting statement. I'm sure he's overcompensating right now. This isn't a high IQ COD team, which is an interesting statement. I don't think, like, I know what he means, and I don't think he's necessarily massively wrong in some regards. But, like, at the end of the day, they didn't win the World Championship last year. But, you know, Maven's opinion is Kenny's the brains of the team. And I think that's probably true on large parts. But, like, are you seeing that? Watching the minimap and watching the games right now? Not really. The other thing that's difficult to determine here on some level is that, okay, is it that Kenny's playing bad and therefore the rest of the team are totally lost on the map because there's no kills and they've got no space? Or is it kind of like a full team situation, and I think it is more so the latter. Like, I don't think that really anyone on OpTic is playing especially well. I think when you watch what Shotzzy's doing, you know, often he's getting caught out. Dashy doesn't seem to be very comfortable right now. Pred's only just come back in and has, you know, is shooting straight, but I don't think his, you know, his execution is where it needs to be. So I think that's, in some respects, what might be keeping Kenny alive on the team, is that, like, yes, his KD was horrific and, like, worst in the league by a margin right now here in Major 2, like the qualifiers, right, so far. But equally, it's not just Kenny, I think, that's underperforming. I think there's an entire team level up that needs to be done. And maybe Kenny can be a part of making that happen. But yeah, it's becoming tricky, right? As Kenny says, absolutely unacceptable for me. Feel terrible for everyone who supports me. Gotta be better. Simple as that. But I've been here before, which is true. And, you know, there's an argument that people will say, and I get this, that sure, Kenny's been in these slumps before. He's had difficult times before. Let's say Vanguard a couple of years ago, when he made it out of the slump and he became a great player and they won the World Championship in dominant fashion at the end of the year. But some would also argue that was a younger Kenny. Kenny's now 25, you know, okay, there's no reason why Kenny should be past his prime or washed up or whatever, but, you know, age affects different players in certain ways, and I think it was Jacob who made the point a little while ago that he feels that Kenny's going through a similar career arc to him, where maybe he doesn't quite have it mechanically as he used to. Still an important player for a team, but maybe, you know, he's on that kind of arc. He's no longer going to be a player who can deliver the big numbers, you know, when it matters, at least consistently, which of course is a concern. And I think that's the thing for OpTic fans is, you know, many of them will have faith that Kenny can turn it around, but equally, when he's going through another slump, not only is it amplified because he's an OpTic, but also, is he actually going to get out of it this time? Because eventually, like if Kenny keeps playing for another 10 years, eventually there'll be a slump that he doesn't recover from, right? So I think that's why there is some serious concern. I think the other point to note is that, like, OpTic have started off this stage here 0-2. I mean, these are the numbers so far. And it's funny to think about right now, but Falcons are 10th in the league. They're, you know, they're mixing it up with the big boys. But, yeah, so they're 2-6. Ravens, of course, went 1-6 in their maps this weekend. And OpTic won 0 maps across both series. So they're in 12th. This is how it looks so far. Thieves 2-0, Rocker 2-0, Surge 2-0, Boston 2-0. So already those 4 teams will feel very confident of securing their spot in the winners bracket. FaZe aren't going to be starting and losers. Probably neither are Toronto. So, you know, all of a sudden, this league, apart from the Falcons, I know there's been some people joking, and I get it, that, you know, OpTic are lucky they're not playing the Falcons this stage, because if they were, they might lose. So, but, you know, ideally OpTic would like a free win, wouldn't they? But they play one game against Ravens next weekend, which is, again, a critical game. They can't afford to lose that one at all. And depending on the results of that one, they will then be seeded for the minor. The minor comes up the weekend after that single elimination. So, you know, they might only play one series then. Then they play Heretics, the team that beat them at the major. Ultra, they're pretty damn good. Thieves, and then Gentlemates. So, you know, you look at this run and you say, well, OpTic are hosting their major this time. It's not exactly guaranteed that they're qualifying in the winners bracket without any difficulty. But at the end of the day, regardless of the situation, if OpTic do want to make a change, they've got to find somebody to change for. I think, honestly, if I was to consider something, I would heavily consider swapping Kenny and Pred around in terms of roles. It may sound ridiculous, but if you can't do anything else, I think that's a better try than changing players. It might not be a great idea, but I think Pred could run the flex well on the second AR, the flex in this game. I think that Kenny could run the sub potentially as well. No, the JaCale isn't quite as strong, but I think that might be something to try. It might not be a good idea. They might have to revert it, but I think it's a better attempt than dropping Kenny for some other player. Because who do you get? That's the issue. If you could drop Kenny and bring in, like, Drazah, then, okay, sure, like, you do it, right? I mean, they tried to do it before they signed Kenny in the first place, but, you know, there's a question on whether that would actually have worked out well or not. There's Arcetes, there's Illy, there's, you know, people have talked about Lunas, right, as well, who, of course, is kind of killing it in challenges right now, but again, you know, he's young, raw, talented player, kind of like Ghosty, but Ghosty, when OpTic brought him in, he did have that kind of, like, leadership mentality component on top, which also helped the team. other players aren't really going to have that, right? So I think that's why it's a tricky spot. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below, but I think the risk is for Kenny that Shotzzy looks over and he says, brother, 0.5, like, you know, and if the team starts to lose faith, that's when things will really start to fall apart. So very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.